I'm going to make a video about this Stihl 031 AV. It's an old chainsaw. It's actually my dad's chainsaw. Bought somewhere in the early 80s, I believe. He used it a fair amount back then. It's always worked great. Then they finally moved years back to a house where he didn't need a chainsaw anymore, but he kept it in the garage until he finally started cleaning stuff out and he gave it to me. So I fired it up. It would run, but it was intermittent. Had issues running, so spark was kind of intermittent on the thing. New plug, of course, all that stuff. Made sure nothing was bad with the cable. So I believe it's the old condenser, and something's wrong with the condenser in there. The points. And this is the older style. They did make a version of this electronic later, I believe, but this don't have that. So I ended up putting in one of those aftermarket electronic boards to replace the condenser. And that's this unit right here. I probably should have filmed this beforehand, but I can kind of go through what we did because there is some great videos out there. Some guys did some good videos. There's one guy with some terrible teeth and a tremendous amount of pens in his pocket. He did a good video, but from what I read online, there's a part that I didn't see in his video, and there's other videos that talk about it, is you have to retard the timing a little bit too for it to run right. And I don't know if it's just this style of module. There's a few different brands out there of these electronic modules to replace the points and condenser. So I don't know if all of them have to do this or just this style, or maybe it don't have to be done at all. I don't know, but they said you have to retard the timing too. Like I said, wasn't in that video. There's other videos about it, so I thought I'd combine them both into one, where it shows retarding the timing and how to install this thing. So yeah, let's get to it. I'll show you how I got it hooked up right here. This is how some guys do it. Some guys put it here. Guys have hid it behind this panel here, but there's not a lot of room back there, so it's awfully tight. So I opted to do it the way the other guys did it. Put it here. It's just a little bolt I found. Just drilled a little hole there. Have a lock nut on it so it won't vibe loose. I also drilled a hole up in here. Had a little grommet I put in there and just punched the wires through. And it's tight, you know. Those wires slip right through here and back and into the coil. So it's a tight fit, but it does work. And I think this should last pretty well, being that it has a grommet on it and all that. These units here should be a negative on the right and a positive on the left. And in a small instruction, a microscopic little instruction they sent with it with a diagram, said some things require the ground, the positive, and the negative's the trigger. I don't believe it's that way. I never heard of the other guys talk about doing it that way, so I don't think that's required with this saw. So yeah, let's get into it. So I already got the air cleaner obviously off and the cover for that, so you get that stuff off. You have 3 screws on the front cover you'll want to take off. That's this one up here in this corner, the one down in this corner here, this one right here. You'll also have to take this nut off and loosen this screw off. There's a fuel line right here that hooks to the fuel bowl. You just pull that off with a pair of pliers. You got a screw here for the anti-vibe handle. There's another one on the opposite side for the anti-vibe handle. And those were really hard to get off. I was unsure if I was going to break them loose. They were in there hard. Almost screwed the screw up, so be careful. Get a nice big screwdriver to fit that so you don't screw it up. You know, maybe the stock Stihl style where you can get some torque on it too, but it fits nicely. And the last bolt you got to get out is this one right here. It's an Allen head bolt. I believe it was 4mm. Those are the things you have to take off, and this whole panel comes off. You don't need to remove the pull start on it, and those should be the only things. So let's get to it real quick here. Like I said, I already did the mod before I started recording, so I didn't tighten anything fully down. Just put it back together so you guys can see what I did. Okay, that should do it for the screws and the bolt. Again, you just got to take this off. I don't have it tight. It's just a single nut on top. It's got a little plate that is notched, so don't worry about losing track. It's got a tiny notch at the 12 o'clock position, so you don't put it back in upside down. Now that's loose. Like I said, I already pulled my fuel hose off, but as you pull this off, you'll need to pull that fuel hose off, and I just used a little pair of pliers, and it's pretty tight in between here on the anti-vibe handle, so I just kind of pushed it down off of that, and then she slides right over. Here's that fuel connection right there that I pulled off previously. Get that out of the way. Get the leaking fuel everywhere. Alright, this is what we'll be messing with right here. So, those two wires come in from the control unit over there. The ground, they say it has to be hooked to the coil. And for you guys that don't know, this is your coil. So that wire is coming right here and has an eyelet, and I put it underneath this. Now, when you loosen this, you're going to have to re-gauge the space between your flywheel and the coil right there. There's a tiny gap between there and there. So if you take that off, I'd recommend you probably should re-gauge that. And with that, I believe the Stihl manual said it should be between 0.2 and 0.3 mil. So I just found a 0.254 in my gauge list here. And you just take that. And it's hard to get in there. It's tight, obviously. So I just moved it to a spot that did not have the solid piece here. This where it's solid from here to here. That's where the magnets are. I think this is just counterweighted over here. There's no magnets on that side. You can see this side is magnetized. And that's what triggers the coil. So I just moved it back from that spot because that seems to be the tightest. Slid this gauge in this way because you're really gauging here and right here on the coil, right in the middle. So I slid it in, kind of held it in place, then rotate this into position. So now the thicker part here, seems to be the tightest part, I got the gauge in there. You can loosen that screw. Again, these were very tight for me. I loosened both of them, put my wire on underneath the head of this screw. Like I said, that goes to the negative side over there. And pushed it tight against there. There's barely any wiggle room. It's not like it's sliding around. There's just a bit of wiggle room, so I just snugged it over while tightening them up. And like I said, these were very tight, so I had to really crank on it to get them to go back down and get them off. Anyways, the positive wire now goes from over there, and the positive wire would hook to your on-off switch here. And that just, all it does is ground it, basically. And then it went over to the condenser and points with the other end. So underneath this flywheel is the condenser and points, and you just cut that wire off from them and hook it to this wire. So now it comes from the condenser and the points, and it also goes to this switch, and it also goes over to your positive on the module. And that's all hidden behind here. So that was already done. I don't want to loosen this again and have to re-gauge it all properly. So and to get that out, I just spun it, pop the gauge out. So that's adjusted right. So the next part now is the part they didn't mention in some of the videos. In other videos, they mention changing the timing, but don't show you the rest of the stuff. So hopefully this will help everybody. One guy showed a way of you can just get your screwdriver underneath, put some pressure on it, apply some pressure. He would use his elbow. Then he had a brass drift, and he would back this nut off, and then he'd just bang it while applying up pressure, right? He's pushing down here, so it's pulling this flywheel upward with pressure. Then he'd take a brass drift and a hammer, and he'd whack it right here, and it'd jiggle its way off. He's a professional. I'm an idiot that don't know what I'm doing, so I don't want to damage anything. So I found this sucker on Amazon. It's a Stihl 031 flywheel remover. It's got two threaded sizes. This unit uses the smaller one, and then a different brand or a different model might use this larger one over here. So it looks like the side I'm using is a M22, and the larger size is an M26, it says on here. So we're using the M22 side. It's got the center bolt. This is what's going to actually press it out. And you can see it go in. So back that all the way out till it's flush to the bottom. So as you screw it into here, in here there's all threaded. Okay, so this is a 13 millimeter here. You want to get that off. One thing I should mention though, I guess beforehand, is to change the timing on it. There's no real measurement or anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to remove this nut right here, 13 millimeter. I recommend an impact. Again, mine wasn't tight. I already had it off, but it's hard to remove. Mine was jammed on pretty tight, so you might want to put a glove on here and just tap it with the impact a little bit to back it off. It's very tight though on there, and you can see what I did ahead of time. Right here's the center shaft, and then you can see right above at the 12 o'clock here, there's a little notch, and there's a woodruff key in there, and that's what holds this in position with the shaft. So to change the timing, we're going to have to remove that woodruff key so it's not in there, and it'll allow us to position the flywheel anywhere on the shaft we want. So I recommend you pre-mark everything here. Let me get a pen again. So I just put the hole for the woodruff right in the middle. So it's right here. And then I used a straight edge. Seen a guy do this. So it's right there, right through the center of the shaft, right through the center of the woodruff key slot. I just put a little mark there on the flywheel. Then I put a little mark up here. Moved it to 12 o'clock perfectly. Put a mark on the casing up there. And I've heard two different things now. To retard the timing, you'll want to go counterclockwise with the flywheel without the shaft moving. I've heard 3/4 of an inch, and I've heard 1 inch. So I don't know which one's most accurate, or depending on your saw, how it's adjusted, you might be somewhere in that range. I don't know. But the few sources I heard said 3/4 inch. So here's my 12 o'clock position where everything's lined up perfect. And I just used this and went 3/4 of an inch over from that mark and put another mark. So when I'm done, this hole in the woodruff key is going to be lined up with this mark over here instead of where I started right here. Okay, so let's get this thing back on there. Again, let's make sure we got this bottomed out so we don't hit that before we fully thread it in, because there's not a ton of threads in there, maybe 3 or 4 threads. So you want to make sure you engage all of them. Got that bottomed out. Now we can start with the bolt that actually presses the flywheel off. Big crescent. Hold that steady. And now 13 mil socket. And let's start pulling it off here. There we go. That was a loud bang. I haven't done this part yet, so that was first time pulling that off. You could hear how tight that was. I was torquing pretty good on it. And then let loose with a nice bang. Okay, I can take that off, get it out of the way. Yep, so here's your points. I left mine in, other guys have removed them. There's the condenser right there, I believe. Alright, I'm just going to leave mine in there. I don't think they're hurting anything. These are the wires leaving them. I just cut them off behind the coil here when I had it off and shrink wrap the end of them. So they shouldn't be in the way. Alright, so like I said again, it's probably hard to see a little bit on the camera, but it's facing that way there. So we'll want to make sure everything's lined up on this shaft still. So like I said, this was the original mark in the 12 o'clock position. So make sure it's centered again since I was torquing around on it. Looks pretty good. And like I said, now we'll want this flywheel to line up over here. First, we got to get this Woodruff key out though. I don't know if you can see it right there. Hopefully I can just give it a little tap and get it to pop out the backside. No such luck. God, that is small. It is barely sticking up above the shaft. It's a tapered shaft too. Let me get a pair of pliers and see if we can get this off. Oh boy, it's pretty tight. Ooh. Huh. Yeah, that's not going to be fun. I'll give it another little light tap here, see if it's tapered on the back edge, and it'll force itself out by pushing it in. No such luck. And there's just no room in there either. Looking to maybe see if there's some room to get a pick or something down in there or on the back side, but it's pretty tight. So, let me see. Yeah, let's see if I can grab on again. I said it's barely sticking up above the shaft here, so there's nothing to grab onto really. I can't even get the pliers to grab onto that thing. Oh boy, this should be fun. What do you guys think? What's the best way to do this? Has anybody else tried to get this thing off before? Man, that is tight. It does not want to move at all. Yep, it's important to get that out so we can slide this shaft on. But if we can't get that off, we're going to be in trouble. Might have to run it without adjusting the timing. Like I said, the first guy didn't adjust the timing and it seemed to run fine, but most people say you need to retard the timing a little bit to get it to run right, or it may run hot. So, what to do here? And I don't want to put heat or anything on it. And of course, all the plasticky parts of the points and stuff are there, so I don't want to mess with that. Yeah, boy. Well, I don't know what to do here. Like I said, I can't even get a good bite on it to pull it out. I tapped fairly hard on it to try to get it to lock itself out the backside, but that didn't seem to help. Yeah, it's not real hard metal either. Just those light taps were starting to mushroom the end of it, so I don't want to do that too much. We won't be able to get the flywheel back on. I'll have to file it back flat again. Well, let me mess with this for a little bit and see if I can get it off camera here so I can get a better view of it without having the camera in front of me. So we'll get back in a second here. Okay, got it. That was ridiculous. So here's the little Woodruff key. If you can see it there that well. It is the semicircular style, so the curved side was down into the shaft. So I just kept doing what I was doing. I just had a screwdriver and just knocked it on this edge that was facing upwards and started to roll it out and roll it out. I mean, this thing was almost vertical like that, and I still couldn't pull it out with the pliers. I had to just keep prying back and forth with the screwdriver to get it to pop out. That was tight as hell. So I was finally able to grab it and yank it out of there. Jesus. What a fiasco. It's always the small things that screw you later. So, anyways, Woodruff keys out was right there. So we'll move that back into our 12 o'clock position. Try to get that lined up perfectly. Get my straight edge back out. That looks pretty close right there. Straight across center shaft, straight across the Woodruff key, and to my first mark was the stock location. Now, theoretically, we'll just put this right back on. But this time, we're going to have this Woodruff key notch going straight this way to my second mark right there, if you can see it on there. So we'll see if we can get that to line up without moving the shaft at all. We want the shaft to stay that way, and we're retarding the timing just a little bit. And I don't know what degree or anything of that it is. This is just, like I said, it's told 3/4 of an inch or 1 inch from the stock location to where we want it to be. See if we can get that to go in. Before I press down on it, we'll take a little check here. Oh, that's too far over, so I'm not going to spin it off. I'm going to lift it up and off. Then try to get to line up. And of course, I got it in an angle that it's trying to grab the magnets onto there, so it keeps pulling it over to this because of the magnets inside the flywheel. Just to make it a bigger pain, of course. Okay, let me see here. Through that, through that. Through that, through that, through that. I think that's actually pretty close right there. So I'm going to push it down. And that's as far as it wants to go. We'll put the nut back on here. Okay. Like I said, there's some sharp edges on here, so careful grabbing it. I'm just going to use this paper towel a little bit so don't cut my fingers up. I'll just tap it a little bit with the impact. Alright. So the shaft's still pointing to 12. And now the mark I put here is where the Woodruff key was. It's now pointing over to here. So I'm pretty close to the ballpark. You've seen how hard that was to come off when we were removing this flywheel. I'm sure it's never been removed in its life. I thought I broke the damn thing. It popped loose so hard. So we'll give it a good shot here with the impact. Because now we don't have a Woodruff key holding it into position, right? So this thing theoretically can rotate on the shaft if you don't have it nutted down hard. But people are questioned, you know, well, how are you supposed to keep it in position? Just the torque of that nut on there holding it on the shaft. But it's not like a vehicle where, you know, you got a fan belt or something else driving off this. Really, the only force on this is just centrifugal force from spinning and a little bit of this magnet grabbing. Once it reaches this area, you know, the magnet grabs it a bit. But really, it's just centrifugal rotational force on it. So it's not driving anything per se. This is just telling it when to trigger. So people say that it's perfectly fine to not have the Woodruff key in there. Just make sure you got it nutted down tight. So, and again, how tight's tight enough? No one mentioned a torque spec on it, so I don't know. I think I'm going to give it one more shot, though, just to be safe, because I don't want this to spin loose. And I'll be having to pull this all back apart again if it's not working right. So there we go. So that's the extent of doing these upgrades, I believe. Like I said, you experts out there have done this before, or you actual small engine mechanics out there that know better than me, or if I did something wrong, please mention it in the comments to me. I don't want to damage the saw at all, of course, sentimental value to me. I just want it to run nice, and I got some projects this summer to hit in the yard, some trees to cut and buck up, so I'd like to use this old saw to do it instead of the newer one I got. So again, if you guys got any questions, like I said, I'm no expert. I just watched some videos myself and read up a couple things. But this one shows the process of both, not only installing the module, but also how to adjust the timing all in one video. So I hope that helps somebody. And again, if I did something wrong or if there's a better way to do it, please put it in the comments and we'll all be better for it. Thank you.